Why don't we go ahead and begin to this wonderful evening? Welcome, everyone, to the Women of Peace Corps Legacy Awards ceremony. Thank you all for joining us as we celebrate two outstanding women who've established careers supporting women and girls globally. It is fitting that we celebrate them on the annual International Day of the Girl Child today. I'm Jody Olson, co-president of Women of Peace Corps Legacy. I will be facilitating this event with Pamela Martin, co-committee awards chair with Sue Malik. As I noted, we're honoring two amazing women, the winners of Women of Peace Corps Legacy's two awards, the Kate Rafferty Emerging Leader Award, Dr. Lorena Magnum, and the Deborah Harding Women of Achievement Award, Ambassador Gina Abercrombie Winstanley. These two women are winners because they themselves have done so much to help other women and girls around the globe become winners in their own families and communities and lives. Their experience as volunteers in the Philippines, Dr. Mangum, and Oman, Ambassador Abercrombie Winstanley, will show us through their stories, how initial volunteer experience influences professions that address the challenges facing women and girls. How can women and girls win, succeed, and thrive today in countries around the world, including here in the United States? They are examples from which we all can learn tonight. They also illustrate the best of the day as we celebrate International Day of the Girl Child. As the UN General Assembly approved in 2011, the International Day of the Girl Child focuses attention on the need to address the challenges girls face and to promote girls' empowerment and the fulfillment of their human rights. As UN Secretary Guterres said, women and girls can lead us to a fairer future. Let us amplify girls' voices and recommit to working together to build a world where every girl can lead and thrive. And partly how it's done, we're going to hear more tonight. The event is being hosted by Women of Peace Corps Legacy. We're celebrating our 10th anniversary, and we connect women to support a better world for women and girls. As an all-volunteer organization, we advocate through the awards ceremony and monthly podcasts, women leaders who have roots to the Peace Corps. We also have a strong mentoring program supporting young women and navigating personal and professional leadership challenges. We host virtual and in-person programs to foster mutual support for women and encourage other networking and leadership building links. You tonight will have the opportunity at the end of the program to sign up to join us. Now, I turn it to Pam to introduce our program for the evening and to introduce the speakers. Pam, it's yours.
Thank you, Jody. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Women and Girls Win. For our program this evening, each of our two award winners will be giving their remarks on how women and girls can win in this world, followed by your questions, comments, and discussion. As our award winners speak, please do not hesitate to just jot down in the chat any questions or comments you have. And once our speakers have completed their remarks, they will address the questions and comments. Also, please note that we'll end our program this evening probably between 8:15 and 8:30, not 8 p.m., which was indicated in some of the flyers, earlier flyers that some of you may have seen. So let's get started. First up is the winner of the Kate Raftery Emerging Leader Award. Now, this award honors an emerging woman leader, under the age of 40, that has shown a demonstrated dedication to improving the lives of women and girls. And you know, it's a relatively new award that is especially appropriate for women of Peace Corps legacy, as it really captures the very important intergenerational aspect of our organization, where women reach out across cultures and across generations to help and support each other. So it is now my great pleasure to introduce the winner of the 2023 Kate Raftery Emerging Leader Award, Dr. Lorena Mangum. And first, let me say just a few words about Dr. Mangum. You saw some of it right there. But I think we can say that her career is very much lit and illuminated by a real passion for service. As a Peace Corps volunteer in the Philippines, she promoted healthy relationships and optimal family well-being for Filipino women and children. And after her Peace Corps service, she was so inspired to continue her work with women and children that she continued her graduate education, ultimately earning 2 master's degrees and a doctorate in social work. And she's still interested in issues of underserved communities, especially women and children. She's now assistant professor of social work at the Jane Addams College of Social Work, University of Illinois, Chicago. I also just want to note here that Dr. Mangum will be donating her $1,000 award grant to a Peace Corps partnership project in Uganda for the installation of a solar computer lab in a village school. So it is my pleasure to give the floor to Dr. Mangum. Dr. Mangum.
Thank you so much, Pam, for that kind introduction. I'd like to start by acknowledging everyone who is here this evening in celebration of the International Day of the Girl Child. Greetings, Madam Ambassador Abercrombie Winstanley, and to our distinguished guests. Greetings to the phenomenal women of Peace Corps legacy, inclusive of its membership and leadership, who uplift and spotlight Peace Corps affiliated women and their amazing achievements. To all of the returned Peace Corps volunteers or Peace Corps response volunteers that are here, good evening, and thank you for your service. It feels so good to be in this space with all of you this evening, to be with like-minded people who have a collective commitment of engaging in work that President John F. Kennedy authorized through Executive Order 10924 in 1961. Let us know where you served. Go ahead and drop that in the chat. And to my Filipino counterparts who are on the call, good morning. I know it's early. Magandang umaga po sa inyo lahat. Again, happy International Day of the Girl Child. I am extremely honored to be recognized as the 2023 Kate Raftery Emerging Leader Awardee. Next slide, please. Since I was a young girl, I've had a distinctive presence in my family, among my classmates, and certainly among my batchmates in the Philippines. Consistently along my path of success, I've been mentored by strong and determined women who inspired me to dream big. With that in mind, I'd like to dedicate this award to those women, as well as dedicate this award to women who have had to defer their dreams in order to be a caregiver or take care of their families, loved ones, and support the community wherever needed. Next slide, please. So I want to start by recognizing the incredible privilege it is to serve as a Peace Corps volunteer for many reasons. Having the ability to be away from home for 2 consecutive years without substantial income, the ability to be deemed physically and mentally fit to serve, and not be a caregiver of a minor child, just to name a few. This, in many ways, can contribute to the lack of representation of specific groups, such as women of color, people with disabilities, people from low-income families, and also LGBTQ+ communities. And we know that at birth or even prior to birth, we are relegated to gender roles based on sex assigned at birth that ultimately determines the trajectory of our lives and sets a tone for inequities. Because of social constructions of gender at the intersections of race and class, we tend to place values on certain characteristics and in turn create a hierarchy which privileges certain people over others. This differential treatment often results in social disadvantages, marginalization, disenfranchisement, oppression, and discrimination. So I have here a figure which illustrates the differences between inequality, equality, equity, and justice. So keep in mind, this evening, I'm just going to highlight several structural approaches we can take to ensure girls and women succeed despite the odds. Keep in mind, I am a public health social worker, and I'll provide insights at those intersections, largely speaking from an equity perspective. And as we can see from the figure, when we're thinking about equity, essentially we're looking at tools that identify and address inequality. So you see here in the first figure, the tree is slanted, but also more apples are to the left, right? So the person on the right doesn't have that opportunity. When we think about equality, two ladders are provided, but still there are those structural inequities where the tree is still bending and those resources sway to the other side. With equity, it's the redistribution of resources, right? So the ladder is taller on the other side, but there's still a lack of apples, right? And then justice, let's go ahead and straighten out this tree so that we have more equal opportunity there. Next slide, please. So as we think about what girls and women need to compete, so I have 5 that I'll touch on during my time. So one of the first things that girls and women need to succeed are opportunities to compete. And so being familiar with Peace Corps requires being exposed to a network of people who have served or have a connection to the agency. And so within the Peace Corps setting, we do our host countries a disservice where there's a lack of diversity. This could be diversity of thought and true lived experiences to enrich spaces that lack that cultural diversity. More broadly, when women and girls don't have the opportunities to compete, there is a loss of innovation and creativity at the table. And so we must be cognizant of the ways in which society limits pathways for women and girls and intervene to bolster our presence. Next slide, please. Second, we need policy development which supports the health and well-being of women and girls. And so one such way, so during my Peace Corps service, I had 3 major projects and grants, 2 funded by SPA grants and 1 funded by World Connect. So our first grant was actually an HIV behavior change grant. And so essentially with that program, because of the Reproductive Health Act that was authorized in 2012 in the Philippines, it actually legitimized the work that we did with HIV prevention and also talking about condom use, and then led the groundwork for its acceptability at our site. And so one such policy, again, with reproductive health, looking at delaying pregnancy with contraceptive options, access to abortions, family planning, and preventing STIs and HIV transmission. And here you can just see, this was actually a training of trainers. And so we had different activities where our counterparts were able to engage in discussion about HIV transmission, do a fun game about transmission and about HIV virus and antibodies, and also think about which categories certain behaviors fall into. Next slide, please. Next, we need true investment in women and girls through capacity building and opportunities for leadership development. So in the Philippines, it was a directive that volunteers were not allowed to conduct any trainings, activities, grant activities, or what have you without a counterpart. And you may say, well, why is that? Well, we have to think about sustainability once the volunteer leaves the site, and how can agencies maintain what was learned and harness that for the betterment of the clients that are served at those agencies. Slide, please. So as we think about being more intentional about investment and capacity building, women and girls must have a substantial role in research development and implementation. As we all know, like we're speaking to the choir, but we are the experts of our lives and can contribute to intervention development and testing. And so for my second project, which focused on maternal child health, which was entitled Malusog na Nanay, Malusog na Anak, roughly translates to healthy mom, healthy baby. I facilitated an 8-week program to women and girls. But first I wanted to find out what they were looking for in a program. So I met with them and asked if I were to develop a program, if I created a program for them and their babies, what do they want to learn? And so they told me areas that they wanted to focus on, like development, attachment and bonding, like family planning. And so then I took their responses and created that 8-week program, again, in consultation with my counterpart. And here we're just talking about family planning in the one slide, and then to the left, we're doing a session on nutrition. Okay, next slide, please. And so lastly, we need leaders who dare to dream big and have that foresight. And so going into Peace Corps, I did not have any expectations about my service, about what I would accomplish. However, my site supervisor had an idea in mind and said, Rena, I want you to build a building. And I guess like many counterparts or host country natives here, that Peace Corps volunteers can help with construction projects and what have you through crowdsourced funding, and I didn't have those resources. So I was a little like afraid like how we were going to handle that conversation. But then I learned about World Connect, and we submitted an application with them for the Cottage Model Housing Program, which provided housing for women and their children while they're receiving therapeutic services and going through the court process from their experiences of being involved with sex trafficking and gender-based crimes. So at the residential center, these women could only come by themselves, but with the construction of this building, could bring their families here on campus to the site and receive services that way. So that was a huge plus for us. Next slide, please. You have to go back to HIV diagnosis. Okay, so to pivot, my current work examines HIV outcomes among Black women. In the United States, African Americans compose roughly 12% of the US population, however, are overrepresented in HIV diagnoses, representing 41% of new diagnoses as of 2019 year-end. Similarly, Black and African American women are disproportionately impacted by HIV and account for 54% of new diagnoses among all women, as we see in the figure. But it's not enough to recognize there's a problem. What are we going to do about it? And so our policies, our values and action, and we have to think about the ways that we're going to leverage legislation to move the needle on these social conditions, exacerbating the quality of life for so many. Next slide, please. And so while there is no vaccine for HIV prevention, the creation and availability of biomedical prevention interventions has increased progress towards slowing the spread of HIV. And so now today, we know that there are multiple methods for preventing HIV using HIV pre-exposure prophylaxis. We have, and many of these methods mirror contraceptive methods also. And so we have Truvada, which is a daily pill that women can take once a day to prevent HIV. We also have Dapivirine, which is not approved in the United States, but it shows efficacy in African nations where it can be, the ring can be inserted up to 4 weeks. And then we have Cabotegravir, which is injectable PrEP, newly approved. And so you can use this and go 8 weeks before the next treatment. And so we're moving the needle with this. And again, it takes that participation and inclusion of women in research to have these outcomes. Next slide, please. And so we celebrate how far we've come in an epidemic, but still how much farther we have to go. Slide, please. And I think that is my time. Thank you all so much. Maraming salamat. And again, thank you for being here today.
Okay, bravo. Thank you, Dr. Mangum. Thank you for providing these concepts that are really these essential building blocks for women and girls to win, and so many very specific examples of those. So thank you so much. Let us now turn to our next award. Next up is the winner of the Deborah Harding Women of Achievement Award. This award honors a Peace Corps woman whose lifelong contributions have made a significant difference in the lives of women and girls in the world. I am delighted right now to introduce to you the 2023 winner of the Deborah Harding Women of Achievement Award. It is Ambassador Gina Abercrombie Winstanley. And let me say just a few words about her before she takes the floor. She has had a really path-breaking career in the Foreign Service and has created new opportunities and possibilities for women and minorities. She served with the Peace Corps in Oman. She was the first woman to lead a diplomatic mission in Saudi Arabia. She advised U.S. cyber forces on diplomatic priorities, and she served as U.S. ambassador to Malta. She's also served as the State Department's very first Chief Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Officer before taking her leadership position at the Middle East Policy Council. She's known for championing accomplished women for senior leadership positions in national security and in foreign policy. I would like to note that the ambassador, will be giving her $1,000 award grant to the Middle East Policy Council, which has greatly contributed to the American understanding of the political, economic, and cultural issues that affect U.S. interests in the Middle East since 1981. And obviously, I don't need to point out that that is certainly an urgent and very critical need in our world today. So, Ambassador Abercrombie Winstanley, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Pamela. Good evening, everyone. I am so delighted and humbled to receive this award and be here with you. That donation, in fact, is important. As Pamela noted, we are unfortunately very busy this week. And excuse me. So I'm going to keep my remarks brief so that I save my voice for the discussion after, which I'm hoping that we'll have a very robust one on the fascinating things that Dr. Mangum mentioned about HIV prevention. I've learned a lot. I was taking notes if you couldn't see me off screen. But really what I wanted to stress this evening was that clearly these last several days have reminded us all of the importance of Peace Corps, of what we were trying to do as Peace Corps volunteers, how valuable, how invaluable our experience is from that, our knowledge and our commitment to peace and finding a way to resolve issues other than through violence. Repeated studies have shown the value of women as peacemakers and peace builders, which is very different than peacekeeping. And unfortunately, the world, including individual governments and the United Nations, we spend a lot more on peacekeeping than we do on peacemaking and peace building. And you'll forgive, this is Mayhem the cat, who is very fond of Zooms. So he always comes if he hears voices, and he will pop up to see your face soon. Governments around the world have acknowledged the role and importance of women's participation in delegations when it comes to peace negotiations and putting in place things that allow the success of the negotiation to last longer. There's several studies that show that. And as I said, governments around the world, the US government has it in legislation. Senator Jean Shaheen was instrumental in getting that in place. And of course, the United Nations is committed to the participation of women. And yet it remains words on paper largely. I will be very honest, although I know this is being recorded, but it is a fact that while the US government is saying that we are committed, we do not hold ourselves and those who we support in their peace negotiations to account. I will just mention Afghanistan as an example, where women were not part of the core negotiating teams. And I will tell you that is why it is less than, excuse me, successful. We must be in the room and we must be at the table. And those who have to live with the agreements, where the borders are drawn, who has access to water, to farmland, to education, to health, are the women who are managing families, of course, and will be able to say whether it's going to last, whether it's going to be sustained. So we have to push harder, those of us who know the value of peacemaking, peace building, peace maintenance, excuse me. We have to push our own government harder to hold ourselves to account, as well as governments around the world. To implement these commitments is our last best hope to change how conflicts are entered into, navigated, and resolved. And I hope we can have a good discussion on that. But those are my points. I'm riled up about this, as you can imagine, as we see what's going on in several parts of the world. We need more women involved. Our voices are imperative. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Ambassador Abercrombie Winstanley, for reminding us of the urgency of peace, which is right at the center of our identity as women of Peace Corps legacy and people that are associated with the Peace Corps. So, yeah. I hope you have been jotting down perhaps a question or two in the chat. I haven't been. If you haven't, please go ahead and write down any questions or comments, and we'll move to the next part of our program, which is our speakers will respond to those questions or comments, and we will have a discussion. So thank you, Megan, for helping us with that.
All right, my pleasure. Good afternoon, good evening to everyone. My name is Megan Celestine. I'm the co-president of Women of Peace Corps Legacy with Jody Olson, and I'm just humbled and really honored to be here and to listen to both of your stories and the focus of championing women and girls wherever you can. And I just am very inspired. So thank you. And so now we're going to be kicking off the question and answer portion. I already see a couple. So let's see. First, I see to Ambassador, how did your experience in Oman help you in your international career today?
Oh, so much, so much. Well, first of all, it gave me a foreign language. I learned my Arabic while I was in Oman. I had the top score among my group, just for the record, many years later, but I still remember that. And really introduced me to the region. I'd been a student at Tel Aviv University as an undergraduate. And so that opportunity to see another part of the Middle East was absolutely key for cementing my area of expertise. So it was that undergraduate and the Peace Corps experience that let me know that the Middle East was someplace that I knew I would be happy living. The culture was wonderful. I will tell you all, you will get a much more welcoming experience at my home from my Middle Eastern experience. The difference I often say with entertaining, maybe different in the South, but that you'll get a cool glass of something in my home before I went into the Peace Corps, but now you get food when you come into my home because it was just such an important part of hospitality there and real graciousness in welcoming the stranger. And I know many of us have had that experience as we've traveled around the world, but I think it makes us better hosts when we're home again. So it started my career, quite frankly. That language that I had got me off of language probation when I joined the diplomatic corps. So I could go off to the Middle East immediately without having to sit through many months of Arabic training. Yeah, absolutely key. Thank you.
Yes, I'd love to hear kind of this intersection of it's professionally, it was really rewarding and got you there, but also that cultural aspect of the
Yeah.
hospitality and bringing that into your life and kind of sharing that as that third goal. So I really appreciate that. Great. I know we have a couple in the chat, but Dr. Mangu, I just wanted to ask, who are you today because of your Peace Corps experience?
That's a great question. As I was preparing for the talk yesterday evening, I had this revelation. And, when I was thinking about my memories and what I wanted to say, I felt like really authentic. And I know a lot of times women in many spaces, we may experience imposter syndrome, but Peace Corps was one place where I didn't experience that. So I think being more confident and just really being more flexible, going with the flow has enabled me to have the career I've had thus far, but also being in tune to not take up too much space, right? So I understand as a Black woman that the oppression and discrimination that I face, but also thinking about being in a foreign country and how that may look and how I have privilege and, thought of having wealth and how do I share space with my counterparts and really, again, think about capacity building and that sustainability. So I think that has helped me and really thinking about legacy, right? How can I leave somewhere better than I found it? But also how can I use myself as a resource to people? And I see there's a comment in the chat about recruiting from more diverse volunteers from HBCUs, HSIs, Indigenous and Tribal Colleges, universities. And we do have a dean, Whitney M. Young, School of Social Work at Clark Atlanta University, on the call now, Dean Jenny Jones. But again, like as I mentioned in my talk, so originally when I finished my MSW program, I thought I wanted to go abroad and teach English as a second language because I have Spanish as a minor. And one of my colleagues who was doing AmeriCorps at my internship told me about Peace Corps. So I had no knowledge of Peace Corps until someone who was affiliated that had that connection told me about it and said, hey, no, with those programs, you have to pay. With Peace Corps, it's free and they give you loan forgiveness and all of these other things. You can get connected into like a federal job and get like NCE. And so really it's being connected with people and having that network, really, those resources I think are important.
Thank you so much. And yeah, I'm kind of hearing that thread of kind of counterparts, working, those connections are so important. And I heard that even through your presentation. So thank you. And for Ambassador, so there's a question, what should we be doing as individuals? And Leah, I see that's your question. Feel free to go off mute if you want to go further with that question. I'm guessing you're talking about the current event.
Why are you on the screen?
That's just my picture, I think. You know that.
Now you need to talk.
No, I'm not gonna.
Sorry, Laura. Let me do Let's do
Ah,
that.
that's better than Mayhem the cat.
Right?
Sure,
Sorry
surprised.
about that. My daughter unmuted.
No worries.
Oh,
No
part
worries.
of the
Thank
joys,
you.
yeah. Yeah, so could we clarify if we're talking about the current situation or something else? With regard to
Yes.
what should we as individuals be doing?
Lee, I believe that's your Lee Lacey. Is that your question? You can feel free to unmute.
I'm unmuted and I've entered a couple of questions. I can't remember which one we're referring to.
No worries. It's just the first one. I'm sorry, I'm from top to bottom because that is the easiest. And if not, we can always go with the second question you have first, which is
Oh,
how are
is the question,
What should we be doing as individuals? Yeah. Are
Yeah,
you talking
so,
about the current Middle East crisis or something
yeah,
else?
it was after the Middle East discussion, so.
Got it.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, I think it's really important that we stay informed. I think it is really important that we speak up, and there are a number of places to do so, and this is where social media can be helpful to engage in a respectful fashion. But we are at the point now where, you know, the heinous unthinkable on the one side has happened, and now we have the unthinkable happening on the other side. And while, you know, the passions are certainly understandable, there is very much a difference between the expectations of the state and of a terrorist organization. So heinous, inhumane, unacceptable, and absolutely. But the state has a responsibility to protect civilians in time of war. We've all signed up for that. And we are seeing with the number of deaths, the latest that I've read is that it's now up to 1,200 Palestinians dead, 250,000 homeless, because we've seen what those apartment buildings look like in Gaza now. So there is a humanitarian crisis that has to be dealt with concurrently. That is just the requirement of the state. And I don't say that it's fair, but we have to speak up about our expectation as government and as citizens, because we are standing solidly with Israel. That means our reputation is also on the line. And that is exactly what we should be, standing with Israel. But that also means holding them and our own government to account to maintain the standards that we say we intend to adhere to. And so adding your voices, I was just reading about a number of unfortunate statements from some student groups, some really great statements from other student groups that are well balanced and thoughtful and reasonable and acknowledge the pain and loss that cannot be gainsaid, but also saying, but you know, like our parents told us, two wrongs don't make a right. I mean, that's in the end. And that's what we have to speak up about.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much. Appreciate those words. And to both awardees, there is a significant conversation around the invisibility of women at all ages. Have either of you been challenged to be too young to be taken seriously or too old to be taken relevant?
That's a juicy one. All right, Dr. Linnea, you want to start on that one? Because I see you looking young over there.
Yeah, I do. I just got a comment earlier today. Someone said, "Are you a student?" I said, "No, I'm an assistant professor." They were like, "Oh, she looks so young." Yeah, so it's still occurring. I think this has. Can you repeat the question?
Have you been deemed too young for your position or to have your voice valued? And I'm being asked, am I too old?
Okay, yeah, sure. So prior to joining Peace Corps, I did work I got my MSW. But after I did child welfare work, so working with parents and dealing with issues of family separation, children being in foster care, then going through the adoption process. So I definitely had my share of attorneys, guardian ad litems, or even parents questioning decision making on behalf of their children, because I'm currently childless. And so I think in those situations, it's important to hear the need, right? Like what's being spoken beyond those words, and really try to gain a mutual understanding and convey like you're here, you have this expertise, you're doing what's in the best interest within that situation, but try to kind of understand the values of those people and see where they're coming from, and just really stand on your beliefs and your training.
Mhm. Mhm. I haven't found my age yet a problem with regard to me either being deemed relevant still or being beyond my time for engagement in a very central way. I think about it myself sometimes because I mean, I remember thinking when I turned 40 that I could just eat everything I wanted and not worry about it because my life would be over and then I didn't have to worry about my figure. I could just eat. And then 40 came and that was not the case. So it's still not. I will tell you, I probably make a little bit more of an effort with adding color to my face. I'm perfectly honest here. I remember reading an article a few years ago about a woman who kept her hair red and then she stopped dyeing it and had that invisibility walking down the street. And I remember reading about that and being very curious. And I will say that there are times when I think that may be happening, that people might be looking through me because I'm older, but it doesn't happen often. And I snap them in the face if I see their attention going where it should be on me. So no, I'm kind of, my presence is great. I haven't had it have a problem yet. And good old red lipstick is good. So there we are.
I always call it my power lipstick. So
In
yes.
fact, this lipstick is called Boss Lady, ladies. Boss
Oh,
Lady
I love
from
that.
Target. It's from the Lip Bar Target. And as soon as I saw the title, I said, oh, yes. All right. That one.
You hear it, everyone. Go to Target now.
Boss Lady.
This is not an advertisement, but great. Ambassador, I'm going to do a two-part question for some that I'm seeing. What would you recommend to the State Department to fulfill the vision you have to include more women in the peace process? And also, what would you recommend to diplomats encouraging them to include diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility?
Okay. For the first part, one of the painful parts of my career, and when I was in the private sector, I used to give a talk called Failing Up. And luckily, it's still a good story. But in 2017, I should have been leading the Office of Global Women's Issues. And at that time, and still to a certain degree, my dream job to go around the world in support of women and girls. Can you imagine anything more compelling and to keep you just jazzed about life? And then the previous administration told me that they didn't want leadership for the position. And in fact, they intended to shut down the office altogether, which my brain could not wrap around at all. And again, Senator Jeanne Shaheen was very, very strong in holding on to that office. So if I were leading that office now, I would be snatching up the Secretary of State to say, sir, very respectfully, you have got to talk about this issue. We have got to be seen to be putting our money where our mouth is, our actions where our mouth is, and questioning all of my colleagues throughout the building as we send teams out. Even now, frankly, There need to be Palestinian women and Israeli women as part of these teams figuring this out. There need to be women if Egypt or Saudi Arabia or the United States is navigating this process, trying to find a path toward peace. There need to be women on these delegations. Now, I saw the previous administration. I remember looking at a photograph. They were meeting with the Saudi government, and there were no women on either side. I saw in this administration, as great of work that they have done, but meeting with the Russians, and again, on our side, there weren't women in the picture, even in this administration. So we have to walk the talk, and we have not yet done that. So my voice would be very loud on this issue. The organization that I'm running now, which many people believe, is connected with a very conservative part of the world, it is a female-led organization, first time in 41 years. I am the president. The executive director, who I help hire, is a woman, and the chair of the board is a woman. And we are leading this, and we are changing how things are done in this organization and bringing in more diverse voices, younger voices, who can speak to the issues now. So I'm doing it even where I am now, and it's important. Now, for the vision that I had for DEIA with the Department of State, I was giving a talk at the Aspen Institute week before last, and I pulled a clip from 2019, and it was a modified hearing that Senator Menendez chaired, but it was to review the GAO report on diversity and inclusion at the Department of State. And it was a sorry report. And they invited me to speak on it. I can't remember why. I must have said something that caught their attention. But I spoke very frankly because I was out of government, so I could be frank. It was good. But it was my excoriation of the Department of State in those remarks. And I said it was important for any organization, when they value something, they rate it and they reward it. And in the Department of State, even though we talked about diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility, we didn't rate it and we didn't reward it. And not only didn't we reward it, but the award rather, that was for EEO, which was kind of how we were calling it then. There were years people understood so well that it wasn't valued in the Department of State, that there were some years there weren't even enough nominees to give the award out because people didn't want to be associated with that. They thought they might be tainted by that. That is how bad it was. So I left the Department of State with a new, what we call precepts for how you are judged to be ready for promotion, and what you do, not just what you talk about, but what impact your support for diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility has, both within the organization and in our relationships in a bilateral fashion. So if you are a public diplomacy officer, a cultural affairs officer, for instance, what do your guest lists look like? And in some countries, it's a very limited, tight number of folks that get to come to embassy events. So are you reaching underrepresented people in the local country, in the host nation? So there are a number of ways, and we gave examples of what we were looking for, and people know what to do. People were worried that it might be a box checking exercise, but you know what? You got to start with something. So check that box, but if you don't support it, you're not getting promoted. So that was one of the main things I talked about in 2019 and that I got done in 2022. So that was really important. And then, of course, the accountability piece. And this depends on the workforce. They have got to call out when they see the walk and the talk are not connected. I just had someone flagged for me today, and I'm out at the State Department, of course, I'll have to pass it on, about our award system and how not transparent it is, that it's very subjective. I remember myself at one stage, while I was working in Tel Aviv, quite frankly, and I'd done a really good project, kudos from the department. and award season came around and I didn't get anything. And my boss came up to me and said, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I forgot, but I'll give you an award next time," which he did not do. But the fact is that it was up to him to remember, to think of me, and to decide he liked what I did enough to award it. That needs to change. There need to be clear criterion, of the same way for getting promoted, the same way for getting awards. So there are many things like that, but the ideas come from the workforce, and the workforce has to keep the organization held to account. If you don't complain, right? So people speaking up.
Thank you. No, I think that's so important, that transparency. And
Yes.
if you're not getting that, then what are we doing about it? So thank you so much. I really appreciate that. So I see a connection, Dr. Mangum, in the chat. So we have Isabel Garcia here, who is actually a part of Women of Peace Corps Legacy in our fundraising committee. She said she works at the University School, Maryland School of Social Work, and she's also Filipina. So I'm interested in how the Peace Corps experience is related to social work. How did you decide to go from Peace Corps to the social work profession? Thank you, Isabel.
Yeah. Hi, Isabel. Also, my counterpart is here, Marvy. Ate. Is she there? Ate Mars. Okay, she's muted. And it's super early in the Philippines right now. Marvy's there. So yeah, Ate. Okay, I think she's coming on.
Hello.
Hello po.
Good morning.
Hi, Te. Thank you for joining.
Yeah, thank you too for inviting me.
Sure, walang anuman. Yeah, so I always work with women and children. And again, I was interested in like going abroad to a Spanish speaking country and really delving in and teaching English. But I was told about Peace Corps. And so during my interview, because of my social work background, they said they would place me in a country, and the sector I worked in was children, youth, and families. And so because I had an MSW, I was placed at a site that had that was like on a compound that serviced two populations. So we had RSCC, which Ate Mars worked at, and it was like the reception and study center for children. So children that were like abused, neglected, surrendered. And we were getting them ready for local adoption, local foster care, local adoptions, and then international adoptions. And then we had Haven for women and girls. So women and girls that were, survivors of gender-based crime, so trafficking, what have you, and they were there at the residential center for support for court because their like impunity is a problem. So for their safety, they're at the center and they have like therapy and other services, but as well as like micro enterprise. So they have skills, which also generate funds. And we also had a bakery there. And so essentially, so that's where social work led me, but then I moved more so into the health realm after doing child welfare work, because a lot of the children and families I worked with experience poverty. And I saw that them being like removed from their homes, it wasn't due to abuse, but neglect, and neglect is linked to poverty, right? So a lack of resources. And so I kind of got burnt out there and then went back to the health route to do community health with community health workers. So then I was a supervisor of community health workers at the local health department, and then went to Pitt. Hello, Bob. I think Mars.
Hold
say
on,
hi.
let me pin so everyone can see this connection. I love this. And so this is your counterpart, correct, Marvy?
Yes.
That is wonderful. Thank you so much for joining us. And thank you, Dr. Mangum, for for answering that question, and for, I feel like you kind of noticed those gaps, and
Mhm.
that kind of led you your career path. So very inspirational.
Ate Mars, did you want to say anything?
Not to put you on the spot.
Wag maging mahiya. Don't be shy. Oh, she's gone now.
Okay. So I just want to share in this group that working with Rina was really great. She was able to make us see the clearer picture of how social work is being done in the context of a Western social work practice. I really appreciate that. Actually, she has a lot of influence the way I should do my work. She also let me appreciate more how you guys love humanity, how you guys love those people who are in the disadvantaged sector in our society. I truly appreciate that experience.
Thank you so much. I really, really, really appreciate you. And I feel like that connects even what Ambassador was saying, just about the role of women in peacekeeping and in everything, and that importance, those connections that we build, the communities that we build. So thank you so much for attending. And next I have, and thank you so much. The chat is just, I can't even keep up with it. And I think I thought I'm also producing. So I'm like, what? This is amazing. But the next one I see is for both awardees. It's, can you share a story about a woman or girl who supported you in your career journey? Dr. Mango, would you like to go
You
first?
want to go first, Ambassador?
I was going to bow to you, but happily, I will say several, interestingly, more men, but I'll say in different ways. And this is a reflection of the reality in which we work. Mentoring, I've had many women help retrieve my career. In my Failing Up talk, I talk about 3 times that I've been fired in the course of my career as a diplomat. It does happen. And it's a very popular talk. Evidently, people like to know that you can fail and still get back up. In this particular case, I lost my first ambassadorship. It's a story. Somebody will have to ask me about it if you want that. But and I thought I was going to have to leave the diplomatic corps because nobody wanted to give me a job. I was what the State Department calls a corridor walker, which is like the worst thing to do because you are invisible and you're just walking the corridor looking for somebody to hire you. Nobody wants to see you. And I went to this woman in HR, and her job seemed to be kind of retrieving people who either misstepped or messed up their bidding. They didn't find a job, and she would find a detail for them to go to another agency or Capitol Hill. She was in charge of all the details in the State Department for civil service and foreign service. And she basically told me to simmer down, sit still, stop trying to solve something that was not in my control at that time to solve. And she gave me the counsel to find out what my corridor reputation was so that I wouldn't waste energy trying things that were not going to help me or were not germane or nobody cared about. And it was her advice that let me find out that what people were saying about me is that I was weak on security, whatever that might possibly mean. And this is after the terrorist attack in Saudi, which used to make my blood boil because I thought, for goodness sakes, if I didn't care about anybody else, I certainly care about myself. And I lived on that compound, but that's a different story. And so that's how I went in pursuit of a deputy assistant secretary position in counterterrorism. I needed that counterterrorism bona fide to clean up that rumor that I was not taking security seriously. And, did that for 4 years. up my budget from 200 million to 300 million. Excuse me. Did a whole lot of good stuff, got some awards, and I got my ambassadorship again after that job. So the mentoring, I would say, comes equally from men and women. The sponsoring, and of course, remember the 3 key words: advisor, mentor, sponsor. The sponsoring has almost all come from men, but because they're the ones in the position to give you a job, to assign you that project, etc. So I certainly have found my sponsors and my mentors in many different people, different backgrounds, some non-binary people. One of my most important effective sponsors for me, as well as mentoring, is a former boss who I would tell you is quite racist about Black people. He loves Hispanics. What can I say? But he gives me straight and true, no nonsense advice. He allows me to think outside of my well-reasoned, inclusive mindset, to understand that different mindset and how I need to approach it in order to be successful. So you can find really helpful people in all kinds of ways, which didn't give you a particular name or anything. Well, I did. Marianne Thomas is a woman who told me to simmer down and figure out where my problem and put my energy there.
And that is so true, because I feel like that you said earlier, the kind of sphere of influence or circle of control. I mean, that still working on it, but that is such a great lesson to have had, and to have someone kind of guide you through that.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right, Dr. Mangum. We gave you some time to think.
Yeah, and she's on the call. Dean Jenny Jones. And so after I finished my MSW, I didn't know that I wanted to be in academia, which is interesting because that's where I met Dean Jones. She's a former professor of social work policy, and now I teach policy. So it's really come full circle. But she was really there for me during my entire Peace Corps experience. Like when I got the blue envelope, I went to her house, we talked about it. We're like, the Philippines, that's really far. I was like, I know. They told me I'd be going to like Central South America, but because of the gang violence, a lot of volunteers had to be moved from Honduras and Guatemala. And so, because I thought I was going to the Dominican Republic, but I ended up going all the way to the Philippines. We're like, it's fine. The sooner you leave, the sooner you get back. Okay. But as you all know, with Peace Corps, it is the toughest job you'll ever love. When I got to the Philippines, it was rain season, and it rained for 9 months. I was really out of my element within my language and culture cluster. So I was the only Black person, but in the next barangay, next community over, there's a Black person. So I felt like really alone. And she was like, well, you need to be more outgoing. And I'm naturally like introverted. She's like, you need to be more outgoing. Like if someone's going for a run or someone says they like running, ask them like, what kind of running do? They do cross country. She's like, you just need to talk about different stuff. And like, she was really like that grounding person for me. Because like I had no one else to talk to about Peace Corps. No one else understood the experience, none of my other family members. So she was really that person, like keeping me grounded, saying this is a great experience. It'll help you once you're done. So I'm truly grateful for Dean Jones, for her support and love over the years. Because I served 2012 through 2014. So she helped me like stay grounded, but she really saw how beneficial Peace Corps was to my growth and development, and how much more mature I was when I came back. Just had a different perspective on things, and that really helped having that person like in my corner. Because it gets tough out there. It gets so tough out there.
I think we can thank Dean Jones for kind of helping recruit you in some way. So thank you. I'm sorry, could you want to finish? Apologies.
Oh no, Dean Jones, did you want to say anything?
Only that I am so proud of you, and I can barely contain myself. Because as I listen to you talk about the growth and And just remembering when you started, I think I must have met you when you were a first semester master's student at VCU, and was just a typical first year master's student. And then to see how you have just grown and taken on all these opportunities and challenges and met them with such strength and perseverance is just amazing to see. I remember you sharing much about your time in the Peace Corps and initially it being challenging, but you didn't give up. You stayed the course and you stayed at it, and it just turned out to be I think one of the best decisions that you made, and the reward for that was, I think, it's priceless, beyond words. It has really made a huge difference in who you are as a person, as a social worker. I think even now bringing that into your work as a professor. So I just see it all as having been a great experience for you. And I'm happy to have been a part of the ride.
Thank you so much. And thank you for joining us tonight.
Absolutely.
All right. I just love all of these relationships and connections. I just see it here, and it's so beautiful that we can just hear from them a little bit along the way as well. Let's see, there are so many great questions in here. What is your favorite memory as a Peace Corps volunteer? Or what's a highlight?
Oh gosh. Well, two, one personal, one professional. I I can still remember my script for going into schools and doing presentations on preventing the eye disease trachoma, which is what my first year I spent doing, lecturing to students about hygiene and in the Arabic of, keep the flies from the eyes of yourself and your brothers and sisters. And of course, I said it in really majestic, classical Arabic. Okay, anyway, I had very nice Arabic, and using it in classrooms and neighbors and chatting was lovely. I love being able to chat with people in the vernacular. And then the personal memory is that I met my husband as a Peace Corps volunteer. He was replacing a appropriate technology who lived 30 kilometers up the road from my village, and my roommate was dating the guy he was replacing. And so I was the first woman that he met in the country. My story, of course, is that he could look no further. His story is a little different, but whatever. We just had 41 years of marriage, and still very much enjoying each other, So, yeah.
Oh,
Peace Corps.
Yes, I love that. And actually, I also met my husband in Peace Corps. He is from Dominica. So I love that. I can't wait till I get to 41 years. But thank you. That is beautiful. And I also saw the spark in your eyes when you were speaking. The phrase that you say. I love that. Thank you for thank you for sharing. All right. And Dr. Mangum, what's your favorite memory or highlight?
Yeah, I guess I could go both ways. So professionally, definitely all of the projects that I've done, typically, with Peace Corps, sometimes, and we have to say sometimes, you're lucky if you have that one quintessential project. Some volunteers may not, and just enjoy the experience of being out of the country, out of that element, but I had three. So definitely the Malusog na Nanay, Malusog na Anak project was gratifying. The girls did yoga, and I couldn't show the pictures for privacy reasons, but they engaged in yoga. They learned about family planning, like we did the beads. They learned what condoms were and how to use them. So that was definitely a gratifying experience. And then also with the training of trainers, because it is a Catholic country. So with like training my older counterparts on like condom use and what have you, that was interesting. And we use like eggplants because in the Philippines, they're more so like long, they're not like large. So using condoms that way and just teaching them and empowering my counterparts to talk to their colleagues, because some of them were gatekeepers. So it's like, how do we navigate those processes so that they're empowered to train someone who is considered their elder and who typically would be training them. So that was interesting. And then personally, just, someone else met their husband in Peace Corps. Oh, it's a lot of people. I didn't find a husband. Oh, but I did find friends. I have the best government issued friends. We're still friends to this day. Every time I like go through DC, I meet up with them, and that has been like one of my best memories. And when we get together, the Tagalog comes back, the games come back, the memories, and it's just amazing. And I'm glad that I have them. And so in my doctoral program, I always felt like I was missing out, like FOMO, but with them, they always kept me grounded, always asked how I was doing, and we could always connect about our wild Peace Corps stories. And that's just like the best thing, because you'll always have those people. So yeah,
Absolutely.
My friends.
Oh, thank you so much. And this has been very fun. I honestly don't want it to end, but we are getting to 8:15. So I'm going to end on one last question that we at Women in Peace Corps Legacy like to ask. And that is, what advice can you give to other up and coming women leaders?
From my perspective, it is absolutely, we must pay it forward. We must pay it forward. So many people have helped me along the way of my career, took time to listen to my dreams and hopes and give me good, solid advice, or straight talk as needed. And so I always will say yes if someone wants to have coffee and talk through, or need a sounding board. Those sorts of things we can do. It just costs us a bit of time and a bit of mentoring, but can be so impactful. And I must admit, it's so gratifying. I've met many people that I've either had the ability to speak with one-on-one or given a general talk to, but something of my experience connected or sparked and helped them decide or make a move or not make a move for that matter. So paying it forward, I think, is the most important thing. And then I would also say, join some of the organizations that are out there. Certainly if you're in Washington, and many of us have ended up in different foreign policy arenas, but I joined WISE Women in International, another I, and Security, but it was just women interested in foreign policy that was geared toward, I'd say, mid-level women and women of color. Advancing Peace and Security has a college cohort as well, but gives an opportunity for women to write on foreign policy issues, to speak on foreign policy issues. And as you go up the ladder, an organization that I'm a co-founder of, the Leadership Council for Women in National Security, that is focused on Deputy Assistant Secretary and above, and similar rank in the private sector. But that organization we launched by providing, number one, asking all, at the time, 17, if you can remember, all the Republicans running in 2016, all presidential candidates, would they take a pledge to make senior assignments on the basis of parity, because we have enough women interested in this field. And 16 of the 17 took the pledge. I'll leave you to guess which candidate did not. And when the candidate that won the election had taken the pledge, then we followed up and provided 800 names to the administration. And we'll do so, whether it's not partisan, you can be Republican or Democratic or anything in between or nothing at all. But if you are ready to serve the American people, then this organization will add your name, your expertise, your CV, your areas of interest, and we will be providing it in 2024 as well, to whoever wins the election, because we have got to amplify each other. Okay.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Really quickly, I'll just echo a lot of sentiments of the ambassador and say that we know as women that we have additional labor and expectations on us that can be, again, inequitable. So I would just say get a team of mentors, because one person can't do it all. And really people have different expertise, so you can lean on them for different purposes. But that would be my approach. I also want to acknowledge Dr. Sarah Goodkind, Doctoral Program Director at University of Pittsburgh School of Social Work, Henrika McCoy. Dr. McCoy is also here. Some mentors and supporters. I appreciate you being here. So, yeah.
Thank you. I love that. All right. So thank you both. This is very, very exciting. Thank you for sharing your stories, for being authentic and vulnerable and really inspirational. Dr. Mangum, thank you for bringing your friends and family mentors just kind of here, and to listen to also how proud they are of you. Just really is very humbling, and thank you so much, both of you. So I will now turn it to Jody Olson to close us out.
Thank you all. I'm here not wanting this to end, because the gifts that both of our awardees have given us are going to live with us for years and years and years. And I appreciate your honesty, both of you, and your own reflections of vulnerabilities, which I think in part is how we can be here for each other.
Yeah.
There's just a couple of phrases that you both have said that I wanted to pick up, because I don't want to lose them. And I'll start with the 4 trees and how you talked about, Dr. Mangum, equality, equity, justice, and the policies we need. You both emphasized leaders dare to dream big. And we women leaders can dream bigger and do more. I also appreciate that both of you emphasized how we remember our own experience as Peace Corps volunteers. What did it give us? How did it nudge us? How did it work with that? And how we hold on to, I'm particularly struck with what you said, Ambassador, how we hold on our commitment to work for peace. That underlying Peace Corps volunteers is that need to work for peace, the way women work for peace. And that's what you both said, particularly Ambassador. Women are peacemakers and peace builders. And I love it when you say we must be in the room, we must be at the table when all the agreements are written. I remember poor Aaron Burr not being in the room. And it didn't go well for a lot of people. But we need to be in that room and at that table from the very beginning, when events occur, when agreements are made. I was really struck by that. How do we leave places better than how we found them? When we value something, we weigh it, we reward it. Must have the walk and the talk to be in sync. We must model, even as women ourselves, we must model what we know should happen for women and girls everywhere. We are the models. And you two tonight are models for every one of us. I mean, it almost just brings tears. And it goes back to what you both said, but particularly Dr. Mangum, mentor, mentor, mentor. We mentor across ages, across professions, across life experiences. And as you said, Ambassador, it might just be an extra cup of coffee at some point, an extra moment of time, an extra hour of time. That's how we change lives. That's how we make women stronger. And I'll finalize my last comment that doesn't even begin to cover the joy of this evening. We stay informed, we speak up, We get our voices heard. We speak frankly. We are never too young. And as you said, Ambassador, we are never too old. I buy into that one. And we always have our boss lipstick, our boss lady lipstick on. So thank you. And you're just going to see, Ambassador, every time you run into any one of us over the next couple of months, we're going to have our boss lady lipstick. Great. Well, we actually do need to close, but you all are so great. So let me just, as part of closing, say, we encourage you, all of you who attended tonight, to make a contribution to Women in Peace Corps Legacy and to support these awards and to support the organizations to which our honorees contribute. And as you see on the slide, we encourage you to participate in Women in Peace Corps Legacy's events throughout the year. And I want to emphasize what you see are the podcasts that highlight women leaders. And they can be found on the podcast app. They can be found on Women in Peace Corps Legacy. But if you just go to your podcast app and pull up Extraordinary Women, here will be the podcast, and you will be inspired. Women are leaders. So visit our network for announcements of visit our website for the announcements of our networking socials, our next season, virtual programs, and the next Women to Women mentoring program this coming spring. Sign up on the website to receive our regular newsletter and to be part of all of these activities that we're doing, which are expanding. So with that, very, very, very reluctantly, I say thanks again to our two honorees. Just do a little virtual thank you to our two honorees. You just have been fabulous. And I want to say thank you to who have helped share the importance of women leaders. All of you have helped share it in the comment section and have been such active parts of the evening, because as active parts of the evening, you are leaders, and you are leaders for women and girls everywhere in the world. I care for you all. What a great inspiration that we all have for each other. So thank you and good night.